It's not as bad as it seems. You see, Doug landed a rich chick. And that night he bet me that I couldn't do the same.
A rich chick. So you'd go with a woman just because she had money?
No, it's not the money. He bet me that I wasn't good enough to hustle her.
Hustle her? And I was worth so little to you that you could just take some stupid juvenile bet?
No, you see, a guy lays down a dare, you gotta take it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Ripe and Real Rotten. It's the podcast where we spend each month looking at your favorite Hollywood artists. We go to Rotten Tomatoes. We look at the best and the worst films in their Rotten Tomatoes filmography, and then we talk about it. And this month we're talking about Tom Cruise, the famous Tom Cruise. As always, my name is Wes, and I'm here with Clay. Clay, how are you?
Good. I tried to make myself a drink for this particular show in the style of the movie, and I have to tell you, my kitchen is covered in broken glass and spilled liquor.
But you have thousands of people just wrapped by your incredible skill at flipping a vodka bottle over.
Yeah, I just put on a hollow 80s cover of a 50s classic, and the people just flocked to my house.
Yep. We're talking about Tom Cruise. We're going to be talking about Cocktail first. And it is Cocktail. It's not Cocktails. It's a 1988 film. It is his lowest rated film. It's at 5% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow, 5%?
5%. And I think a good place to start off with that is just to say that...
It tells you how much research I do for this show. I'm shocked by this.
I think a good place to start off is that it kind of highlights the weirdness of Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't think we've ever claimed is a perfect system for ranking movies. But I will say that this has been the most enjoyable of the bad movies, I think, to watch that we've done so far. Not to say that this is a good movie. It's a pretty terrible goddamn movie. But this is... Yeah. It took us 3 movies to get to what I would consider to be a good bad movie. And I think Cocktail kind of fits that to a T. And the fact that it's at 5% on Rotten Tomatoes is a little bit odd. The fact that A Good Year is at 25% is a little bit odd. But I guess you just
baffling.
Have to... Yeah, you just have to... You have to look at it as just... I don't know. It's not like a spectrum of 0 to 100 where it's increasing. You just really have to go with broad strokes with Rotten Tomatoes, I think. But anyway, we're going to be talking about Tom Cruise. Cocktail is first. A little bit of background on Mr. Cruise. His full name was Thomas Cruise Mapother IV. He's professionally known as Tom Cruise. He, in 2002, was Hollywood's highest paid actor, or 2012, I'm sorry, was Hollywood's highest paid actor. 16 of his films grossed over $100 million in the U.S., and 23 have grossed in excess of $200 million worldwide. He is... How old do you think Tom Cruise is, Clay?
55.
Yeah, he is 55. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I'm super fan, Clay McCormick.
I'm surprised. I would have guessed that he was older, but he's not that. He was born in Syracuse, New York, the son of Mary Lee and a guy named Thomas Cruise Mapother III, who was an electrical engineer who worked for a bunch of Air Force institutions, both in Canada and the U.S.
Are we sure that guy's a real person and this isn't just some sort of like Highlander situation where it's the same guy, he just every 25, 30 years he fakes his own death and steals and creates a new identity? Because Tom Cruise does not age.
He catches whatever
as
the
far as
souls...
I'm concerned, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it could be the same person.
Whatever the souls in Scientology are called, he's managed to harness them. Cruise grew up in near poverty, had a Catholic upbringing. His family was dominated by his abusive father, who Cruise has described as a merchant of chaos, which is a pretty intense way to describe your father. Cruise has said that he was physically beaten by his father, who he has called a bully and a coward.
Sorry, not awesome, but it's terrible. I shouldn't be laughing about it.
Part of his childhood in Canada, he moved around a lot, which is interesting. He attended 15 schools in 14 years while he was growing up.
Yowza.
Which is illuminating. I think that might be the most illuminating fact. Anyway, his first film was a bit appearance in 1981's Endless Love. He had a major supporting role in Taps later that year. In 93, he was part of the ensemble cast of The Outsiders. And in the same year, he appeared in All the Right Moves and Risky Business, which we'll be talking about after this one.
Question.
Yep.
Where does Legend fall in his filmography? That can't be after Risky Business.
Legend is after Risky Business. That's 1985.
No fucking way.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
That's really surprising because Legend seems like one of those movies that you do before you become famous.
Famous, yeah. So as I say,
and I say that as someone who loves Legend.
And '86 was Top Gun. So that was his kind of start. He's been nominated for 3 Academy Awards. He's won a bunch of Golden Globes. Can you name, Clay, the films that he's gotten an Academy Award nomination for?
Magnolia.
Yep.
Eyes Wide Shut.
No.
No. Oh, that's a shame because that's the movie he didn't know how to act for the first 25 years of his career until he made Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Magnolia. Let's say Born on the 4th of July.
Yes, that is the first one. Yeah, so you're missing the middle one.
The middle one
came out in 1996.
Oh, Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. Yep. So those are the 3 he was nominated for. He did a whole bunch of films. His filmography is huge. I'm not going to go into that. Everyone knows what he's done. Vanilla Sky, Minority Report. This is War of the Worlds, Last Samurai. That was a big era for him. Lions for Lambs, Tropic Thunder. Valkyrie, which I'm only bringing up because it's the movie that I first went to see with my now wife when we started dating. We went to go see Valkyrie, which is
a nice romance.
I like killing Nazis, and that's the only reason I think I would remember that film. If I had not seen it in any other situation, I would have forgot. Mission Impossibles, all the Mission Impossibles, blah, 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 everything else that's happened. He's had some of the most lucrative film deals in Hollywood. He was described in 2005 by Hollywood economist Epstein as one of the most powerful and richest forces in Hollywood. That's about it. And then Scientology, which we will probably poke fun at as we go along. But he has a whole bunch of weird personal stuff, and he's a huge Scientologist. So you can watch Going Clear, the HBO documentary, or read the book, which I would recommend to learn all about that. And then that'll segue us into Tom Cruise. But how do you want to talk about this one, Clay?
Well, I just wanted to say Tom Cruise is one of those interesting actors where, I've talked about this with Sean a couple times, Sean Murphy. And he's like, what's the last bad movie that he made? Like, aside from The Mummy, this was before The Mummy came out, and which was why The Mummy was a little bit more surprising to me than I wasn't expecting. Let's put it this way: I was expecting The Mummy to be better based on his involvement, because just if you look back for the past 15 years, or say since the beginning of the 21st century. What was the worst movie he's been in? They're all pretty good.
Yep. I'm looking now. Some of them I don't know. But since 2010, it's been Night and Day, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, Rock of Ages, Jack Reacher, Oblivion, Edge of Tomorrow, Mission Impossible, Jack Reacher, The Mummy.
Okay, well, Night and Day I don't think was very good, and Rock of Ages probably wasn't very good. But generally, he seems like he makes more good movies than he does bad movies, which is fairly impressive if you think about it.
He's kind of Brad Pitt does the same thing. Brad Pitt doesn't put himself in bad movies very frequently.
Yeah, and if he does, is usually something kind of quirky about them that kind of explains his involvement.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why when The Mummy, I actually can't believe The Mummy isn't lower than Cocktail, because I mean, come on. Which was why I was when they announced that he was going to be in The Mummy, I was like, oh, this maybe isn't going to be as terrible as it seems, because his last handful of movies pretty solid. He's a pretty solid bet, and he seems to make fairly good decisions.
Yeah.
This movie, I don't know. This movie's. I don't think this is a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's also not like an offensively bad movie. I just think it's a movie entirely of its era that just does not age well at all.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think that. Well, to start off, I guess I'll talk about what I think about Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise to me is the same thing as you were saying. Like, he doesn't make a lot of bad movies. I don't know if I'd call him a great actor, and I think that he kind of settled into a different phase of his career after like 2005. Sort of like now he's the action hero you wouldn't really expect, a la Liam Neeson in a lot of ways. Like, he's just kind of in these big action-y blockbuster movies. And I think that he's not
Sorry, I was just going to say, he kind of has three sections of his career.
Yes.
Right? He's got Tom Cruise, the movie star, right? which is basically up until Eyes Wide Shut. Then he works with Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick teaches him how to act, and he turns into Tom Cruise, the actor.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, around the point that you're saying, he turns into Tom Cruise, the action star.
I would say it's around The Last Samurai. That seems to be the dividing line in 2003.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the crossover point, because that movie, I love The Last Samurai. I think that movie's great.
So in between, he had Eyes Wide Shut, Magnolia, The Others, Vanilla Sky, Minority Report, Austin Powers, Narc, Shattered Glass. Those are the movies in between Last Samurai and Eyes Wide Shut.
I think those might be movies he produced, because I don't think he's in The Others.
Oh, he's not in Narc. Yes, he's in...
Yeah, he's not in Narc.
He has a cameo in Austin Powers. He's in Minority Report, Vanilla Sky, The Others, and Mission Impossible and Magnolia. Yeah.
Yeah, but this movie, Cocktail, kind of is... I think it's the worst kind of Tom Cruise, and after Eyes Wide Shut, he kind of changed the way he handles stuff. Like, this movie is just him grinning like a fucking moron for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And to the point where I was just like, shut your mouth. Just shut your mouth.
You know what? My thing about Tom Cruise is that I feel that he... And this is probably, like, if I were to do a little bit of armchair psychology on him, it's probably down to the fact of that he switched school 15 times in 14 years or whatever.
Yeah.
He has and it comes across really strong in Cocktail. He always... His movies are split about whether or not he plays it this way or another way, which I mean to say is that when I see Tom Cruise doing interviews, he comes across as an extremely fake person who's basically a brand at this point.
Yep.
And I think that his worst acting performances, like this one, come across as someone who is pretending to... He's an actor, so it fits, but he's like pretending to be this person in a weird way.
100%. I know exactly what you mean.
And the way that it applies worse in this movie is every time he laughs in this movie, it's the kind of fake laugh you give at someone who's not being really funny, and you're just like pretending to laugh at them.
Yep. Yeah. The thing about moving around in his childhood is interesting, because the thing that really made it stand out to me in this movie is he plays a character named what the hell's his first name? I can't remember his first name.
Tom, I wrote it down. Hold on. Brian Flanagan.
Brian Flanagan, right? With an emphasis on being Irish. That felt so foreign to me as far as Tom Cruise goes, because when I think about Tom Cruise, I don't think about any sort of specific, like, nationality. He's just sort of like
a white guy. Yeah.
And to his benefit, that works because he can be anything.
And his last name is Cruz. Like, he calls himself Cruz. Like, there's no ethnicity to that name besides English, obviously, but yeah.
But when you try to map his skin onto a sort of ethnic whatever or a specific nationality, it doesn't feel believable at all.
Yeah.
Because and I think, like you were saying, in his worst performances, this being a very a good example of that.
He was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Actor of this year when this movie came out, Cocktail.
Yeah. He just doesn't feel like he has any real emotion or real personality or any. It's all comes across as very much a facade.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think that I've ever really thought that isn't the case with him as a person either. Obviously, I don't know the guy. I'm sure he's, he might be a really great person in real life. I don't know.
Well,
but as far as his public persona goes,
yeah,
it feels very much like he does in this movie, where it's like you see the shell that is Tom Cruise, and that's just it. There is no, like, it's kind of like the monologue from American Psycho, where there is an idea that is Tom Cruise.
Yes.
But it's a hollow shell, that kind of thing.
Every celebrity anecdote I've heard about meeting Tom Cruise, so it's like a third-hand anecdote I've heard through someone being interviewed or talking about meeting Tom Cruise, is that the impression he gives when he meets people in real life is that they're like, is Tom Cruise an alien? Kind of. Like, he seems a little bit detached from reality and has sort of like weird quirks to him. Like, I think the Adam Carolla has a story about inviting him to a Super Bowl party at Jimmy Kimmel's, and he showed up with like cupcakes and his mother to the Super Bowl party, and everyone is just like, why why did you bring cupcakes? They're great, but this is like, why is your mother here? This is a very odd situation to be in. So that's kind of Tom Cruise's real life thing. And I think the moving between places, I bring that up just because he strikes me as someone who has been trying to fit into places so long and for so hard that his act of trying to fit in and be amenable has sort of replaced his real personality.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the Scientology thing makes sense if you distill it back to that too, because that is basically what centered him.
Yeah, it gave him a purpose. Yeah.
It gave him a purpose, and it gave him if not a personality, something to focus on as with his life outside of being an actor. So that doesn't really surprise me at all. I think it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I say that as someone who likes Tom Cruise generally. I think he's I like later Tom Cruise more than I like early Tom Cruise. Like, I don't particularly care for Top Gun. And this movie is terrible.
Yeah.
I like Legend, but not because of him.
Yep.
I don't think I've seen many like mid-era Tom Cruise. I've seen Jerry Maguire, but that's about it.
A Few Good Men. You've seen Days of Thunder, maybe Rain Man.
Nope. I've seen Rain Man.
Interview with the Vampire.
Yes, I have seen that one. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. But again, that's like an ensemble piece more than it is a Tom Cruise movie.
Yes, yeah.
But like Eyes Wide Shut, love Eyes Wide Shut. Magnolia, love Magnolia. Collateral, love Collateral.
Yeah, Collateral's very good too. Yeah.
Minority Report's great. The Last Samurai is really good. War of the Worlds, I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen it, but
Tropic Thunder, fantastic.
Oh yeah, he's good in Tropic Thunder. Yeah, but yeah, he generally tends to put in all of the Mission Impossible movies except for the second one are great. He generally picks good movies and puts in a good performance for the most part.
Yep.
I've noticed. We were talking about how nothing he does really comes across as genuine, but he's always. I feel like at this point in his career, he doesn't know how to play emotions.
Right.
At the cocktail point, but he does know how to do the one thing that he's really good at, which is intensity. Like, I think Leonardo DiCaprio. I think Leonardo DiCaprio has the same problem. I don't buy Leonardo DiCaprio in about 90% of the roles that he takes. I just don't think he's as good of an actor as he thinks he is. But there is a certain thing that he does really well, which is basically what he does in The Departed.
Yeah,
where he acts like a tweaked out, stressed out guy.
Yeah,
he's really good at that.
Guy up against the ropes.
Yeah. Tom Cruise, very good at intensity. The one thing you can say about Tom Cruise is he is intense. If you go back, I remember the trailer for the first. What the hell's the name of that movie? You just talked about Jack Reacher. The first Jack Reacher movie. Like there's a shot of him changing gears in the car, which is like the most intense gear shift I've ever seen in anything in my entire life. So he really puts the intensity in. And at this point in Cocktail, he doesn't know how to do emotions. He just does really intense versions of what he thinks those emotions are.
Yeah.
So when he laughs, it's a very intense laugh.
Yeah.
When he cries, it's a very intense cry. It's not like a honest reaction. It's just a very intense reaction.
Yeah, it's hard to describe. I wouldn't say he's a bad actor. It doesn't come across as genuine on some level. Like he'd almost be a better stage actor in some ways because it's very broad and like projects very well. And yeah, that's really the takeaway that I get from him. But it's funny that you mentioned sort of I was looking at reviews to sort of lead up to this, and as a short segue, I ended up on Roger Ebert, and I miss Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert, I think, now that I've been doing these more movie podcasts, I come back to Roger Ebert's reviews quite frequently because Rotten Tomatoes is funny. If you go to a Rotten Tomatoes site and you click on some of the reviews to see what people think, a lot of modern film reviews are 1.5 paragraphs where half of it is describing the plot of the movie, and then they give a couple sentences about like something so vague that you don't even know if the person watched it. They might have just flipped a coin to decide if they liked it or not, and then they're like, good acting, terrible direction, but I can't wait to see what they come up with next. Like, that's the movie review. Yeah,
most modern reviews, I usually just scroll down to the last paragraph.
Yeah.
I don't even read the rest of them.
And I don't know if they're just trying to get the placement on Rotten Tomatoes because they're a major site and they just want people to click through to their site or whatever, but Roger Ebert was if you read all of his reviews, everything is kind of a little bit of a different thing. He doesn't have like a formula to how he reviews movies. He does like Go ahead.
You can really tell when he's had a bad day, too.
Yeah, right. You can't like
the one review that I've read of his, the one review I read of his that to this day I don't understand is he gave the Usual Suspects 0 stars.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
If you read that review, it's just him being like, I don't know, guys. I didn't know what was going on in this movie. I couldn't follow it. I didn't care. Like he didn't. He really didn't put in the effort on that day.
And it's unfortunate it was such a huge... It wouldn't have mattered if it was some no-name movie no one had saw, but it becomes this huge thing and everyone has to go back. But he's really creative with his reviews, which is what I like. So this is not the review for... This is the review for Days of Thunder. I'm just going to read a little bit. Days of Thunder is an entertaining example of what we might call the Tom Cruise picture, since it assembles most of the same elements that worked in Top Gun, The Color of Money, and Cocktail, and runs them through the formula once again. Parts of the plot are beginning to wear out their welcome, but the key ingredients are still effective. They include 1. The Cruise character, invariably a young and naive but naturally talented kid who could be the best if ever he could tame his rambunctious spirit. 2. The mentor, an older man who has done it himself and has been there before and knows the talent when he sees it and who has faith in the kid, even when the kid screws up. 3. The superior woman, older, taller, and more mature than Cruise, who functions as a mentor for his spirit, while the male mentor supervises the craft. 4. The craft, the gifted young man must master a craft. 5. The arena, the young man must be tested in an arena. 6. The arcana, consisting of the specialized knowledge and lore that the movie knows all about and we get to learn. There's a couple more after that, but I think that's true for a lot of the Cruise movies that lead up to this, and it's true for Cocktail as well.
Well, it's very much, I mean, what he's describing is more or less an abridged version of the hero's journey kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I always forget about The Color of Money. Color of Money is fucking great. I am not the biggest Scorsese fan. I don't know if I'm just someone who likes to have the counter argument as far as Scorsese goes, because everybody seems to love him so much. But I think his better movies are his lesser known movies. Mm-hmm. And Color of Money is fantastic, and also The King of Comedy I think is his best movie. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, those are all very similar. It's interesting that he calls out that structure as the Tom Cruise movie, because for Cocktail, I didn't even think about how similar it was to like Top Gun, but it's kind of the same. This felt like basically like Blue Collar Wall Street to me.
Yeah,
you know,
right,
like even down to the point where you've got your older mentor character who's got like his rules of success that he's doling out and all that kind of stuff, and it's about a kid out of college, or in this case just out of the Army or the National Guard or whatever, trying to make it in New York and seemingly only failing upwards, and the biggest problem he has is that he's got 2 rich women who want to sleep with him instead of just nobody.
Yeah, like
this movie made me mad. I said on Twitter that I think this movie is probably Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe in the Good Year's favorite movie.
Yeah. Because
it's the same kind of thing where it's like at no point in this movie are the stakes really even relatable.
No, well, I mean, let's talk about Cocktail. So, general impression. Me and Amy watched this and we just laughed. Like it was just like it's the movie that you go, what the fuck is happening? Every 10 minutes you're just like, why? How did he get there? What's happening here? And I think that Cocktail is not an offensive movie to watch. I do think it's a good bad movie. It's like it's enjoyably 80s. Everything about it is so dated. And the sort of thing about it, from Ebert's review, and I'll kick it back.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it posits a world in which the hottest nightclub in New York is TGI Fridays.
We'll get to that, because I had to stop the movie and run to Wikipedia to understand what was happening. In Ebert's review for Cocktail, he says, Cocktail is an interesting movie about drinking and bartending that seems to know absolutely nothing about drinking or bartending.
See, the name of the game is woman. Little darlings come in a-panting, the little hearts are pitter-patting for the handsome, all-knowing bartender. And in their wake, a parade of slobbering geeks with one hand on their crotches and the other hand on their wallets. You get the women, you get the bucks, and boy, oh boy, you got them. Buttons were popping, skirts were rising. When you can see the color of their panties, then you know you got talent. Stick with me, son. I'll make you a star.
Thanks, man, but I gotta be honest. This is just a part-time gig for me. I'm in a business program, City College days.
Ah, seeker of wisdom and truth. Well, you couldn't have found a better work-study program than right here. To a future leader of America.
I'll stick with the brew.
Beer is for breakfast round here. Drink or be gone.
This is a movie that the concept I do not understand whatsoever, because it posits a world where bartenders are doing like backflips and flipping bottles, and they take 10 minutes to serve a drink, and they're like high-fiving each other, and they're very high stakes. They're like celebrity bartenders. And not only that, but the crowds that go to bars are willing to put up with it because there's such great entertainment that they don't really care about getting drinks. They just want to see the bartenders. And none of that makes any sense to me. That feels completely unlike anything I've ever seen. And the movie isn't like it's not like a beer fest comedy where I'm just like, okay, this in this world, this is the kind of bartending that goes on.
Yeah.
It feels too realistic for that. So it comes across as really odd.
It's like those episodes of like Saved by the Bell, or really any sort of kids middle young adult show where the kids put a band together and do like a shitty cover, but the episode is like they're playing in front of the Rolling Stones and they're being signed to, it's like there's no concept of how this world actually works. It's just a idealized, fictionalized version of how cool it must be to be a bartender in New York.
Right.
It's very, like, it feels like Coyote Ugly a little bit.
Yep.
Like
yep.
The whole, and I don't know if, I mean, obviously Coyote Ugly is after this, so maybe, you know, I mean, it's also a real thing.
I mean,
so
the more exaggerated
maybe
version.
This is, oh, go ahead.
Well, the more exaggerated version I was thinking is Roadhouse, kind of.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it's a more toned down version of Roadhouse in a lot of ways.
Unfortunately, actually, no, technically someone does get their throat ripped out in this movie. So yeah, it is very similar to Roadhouse in that way.
Let's see here.
I thought, sorry, I was just going to say, going back to sort of like the Tom Cruise movie sort of thing, or like the kind of movie this is, the thing that really stood out to me in the opening credits that kind of told me everything I needed to know was very close to the beginning and very large. There was a credit for it says cocktail album supervised by.
Yes. Yep.
Which it's right in the pocket. This is 88, right?
This is 88.
88. Right in the pocket of where soundtracks have become huge. And apparently in lieu of getting Kenny Loggins to write something for your soundtrack, you just take a bunch of old rock and roll songs and re-record them.
Yeah. I guess the guy's name is Maurice Jarre or Jarre, something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that. I know that name.
Yeah.
I can't remember what else he's done, but I've definitely heard the name before. Yeah, and it's very much like it's the most commercial kind of movie, you know, where it's like every aspect of this is going to be something that they could sell at a different, and obviously that's the point of movies, is to be as commercial as possible, but this feels like the most kind of commercial movie at the time. But that wasn't like a big budget blockbuster.
This is my one bit of trivia. The cast and crew who talked about this movie and the production that went into it is based on a movie, the original screenplay. Said that the original script, everyone said the original script was fantastic. They said it was this dark comedy about like the price of celebrity on some level. Yep. And it was really funny, really dark, really sad. Tom Cruise got listed as the lead role, and they rewrote the script because they wanted it to be more family friendly. And the original author who wrote the original screenplay was not happy with the way that the screenplay turned out, obviously.
This was the family-friendly version?
This is the family-friendly version. So, Tom Cruise, and a lot of the quotes are funny about it. It's just like, people are just like, it was really great, but then, Tom got signed. Tom's a nice guy, but once Tom Cruise is attached to your picture, it has to be a certain kind of movie. And that's the way that they went with it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I heard that coming out of The Mummy as well, where it's like, they had a certain thing that they were trying to do, but as soon as he became involved, he became, he wants to make sure that the movie is going to work up to his standards, and you can't say no to Tom Cruise.
Right. He's going to make you money. So it's whether,
exactly. Yeah. He's doing you a favor basically by being there. So you may as well listen to him.
So let's talk about Cocktail, because Cocktail is hysterical on a lot of levels to me. Cocktail is a movie that makes very little sense. Tom Cruise plays someone coming out of the army or something. I think someone says he's coming back from war, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He returns to New York, and he's got dreams of making $1 million. He reads all these books that have titles like How to Make $1 Million. He hangs out with his uncle.
Only one Donald Trump joke in this movie.
Yes,
I was surprised.
only one.
I was expecting him to be reading Art of the Deal at some point.
Not even a joke. It's more it's a praise of Donald Trump. He's not yet a joke in the universe of this.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a professor talking to his students saying, "One day you might be as successful as Donald Trump."
I just want to point out again how kind of ironic it is in retrospect that at least up to this point, I was like, is this a documentary? Because it's about a guy who works at TGI Fridays, and his idea for a multi-million-dollar business idea is to turn a bar into something so digestible that it's in every shopping mall in the country. And it's like, oh my God, is this actually about the guy who started TGI Fridays?
All right, so we'll get into that. So I'll just bump through this where he goes to his uncle. His uncle is an old Irish guy who works in Queens. He owns his own bar. And Tom Cruise does the dramatic film thing of he walks up to the chain link fence and he looks through it and he sees Manhattan in the distance and he knows he can just barely touch it. Smash cut to an interview sequence, which was filmed maybe 6 months later because Tom Cruise's hair is 5 times the length that it was.
His hair is completely different, yeah.
And then he gets rejected from all these jobs. So he's walking home, and he gets a job at a bar. He goes in, and he meets this guy who's played by, is it Byron Brown? Is that guy's name?
I don't know. The only other thing I know him from is the movie FX, which is a movie I don't think anybody has seen.
Yeah, it's Brian Brown. He becomes this mentor. He's the bartender. He says, sure, Tom Cruise, I'll give you a job. The next 10 minutes is him going through this job. I was spending the whole 10 minutes that he's working at this bar going, why are all the waitresses in this Upper East Side classy bar dressed like they're TGI Fridays waitresses?
Yeah.
And then we're watching it, and I'm going, I can't understand what kind of thing this is. And then it cuts to an exterior, and it is the original TGI Fridays location. And just to blow your mind, I had to stop the movie at that point and say, why is this in the TGI Fridays? Apparently when TGI Fridays came out, it was a swinging nightclub. It was like it was a high-end singles mixer, like very prestigious, very like the place you want to be kind of place before they franchised it and turned it into a family restaurant.
Huh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So I don't know if this is the case in 88 or if they're supposed to be in the past at some point, but yeah, it was apparently a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is an interesting epilogue to this movie because that's basically where he ends up.
Right.
That's the road he ends up on, even though he's at some other, bullshit bar. But
not in Jamaica, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately, no. So, having just come back from Jamaica, not entirely different from that.
No. So what's I don't know. We don't have to go too much into the plot. There are moments to do and everything. But what was your reaction while you were watching this one? You sound like you weren't too negative on it. Maybe you enjoyed it a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoyed stuff about it. I thought for lack of a better term, the special effects were good. Like all the acrobatics that they do with the cocktail. I mean, that stuff is fun. It's like I said, it doesn't age well. It's not the kind of movie. It's a movie perfect for 1988. It's about a kid who thinks that the world is his, and he goes out there and he picks up bartending in like apparently 6 hours. Yes. He knows how to do everything.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, it's only about being the most successful at bartending, sleeping with hot chicks, and going to Jamaica, making a bunch of money. And then it turns out that the girl that he really loves is also rich. It's one of those. It's very much a young 80s man fantasy movie.
Yeah.
Which I just don't really think plays anymore. It just, I don't know. It was tough for me to watch this movie given the current like political climate and economic climate and feel like it was a good escape. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yes. See, I think it's much worse of a movie than just a functional, outdated movie. I'm not saying that that's all that you think it is, but
Yeah.
I think it's a movie that the tone totally shifts over the course of the movie. Like, he stops bartending about halfway of the movie through, and it just becomes a like heavy-handed drama morality tale or something like that, where the opening part is him juggling bottles and becoming this bartender. And honestly, I spend the first, after he goes to Jamaica, right, and it jump cuts to Jamaica and he's bartending in Jamaica, I was sitting there wondering, why did we watch the first 20 minutes of this movie?
Right.
Like, there's nothing in that you really need to know, because everything that happens after that could be explained by subtle exposition.
Yep.
And then it would move into the relationship aspect and everything like that. But I thought that the Brian Brown character is ridiculous. Like, the whole interactions here that people have with Tom Cruise is absurd. Like, he becomes this guy's best friend. They start talking about opening businesses. Tom Cruise gets laid, and Amy's point was, why is Tom Cruise not getting more laid leading up to this point? And he gets laid where they have this vicious rolling around sex, like the most rolling anyone's ever done in their lives. And then he tells Brian Brown about it, and Brian Brown reacts, and if it was a movie that took place 10 years later, he would be revealed to be homosexual by the end of the movie, because he totally cockblocks Tom Cruise in this really weird, angry way. Like, he reacts so negatively to Tom Cruise being in a relationship, you get the sense that he's jealous of him.
Right.
And it's not. He does it just to sort of sabotage Tom Cruise's aspirations, because he wants him to be part of his Barnum and Bailey circus bartending act and go on and do things. And then it cuts to Jamaica. Yeah.
That whole thing, the relationship between those two is really fascinating, because, like, it never really pays off. It's just, I mean, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to, because, like, I don't know if the movie's necessarily about it. But
I think it has to be more. There's after all this horrible stuff that happens and they go to Jamaica, he just shows up and Tom Cruise is like, this guy back in my life after all these years,
and he so easily falls into the trap of, so the thing I was trying to figure out is, okay, so he's in love with Elizabeth Shue. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Sure.
And then he goes for this dare that, or this bet that Brian Brown puts on him to go sleep with this rich woman.
Yes. Brian Brown plays Tom Cruise like a harp from hell, to quote the Penguin.
Yes.
Yeah, this entire movie.
And not only does Tom Cruise go through with it, like at the end of the night, Brian Brown is long gone.
Yeah.
There's no reason why Tom Cruise has to follow through with sleeping with this woman. But obviously, I mean, like it. That aspect would have played more with me if it had been established that he is someone who sleeps around.
Yes.
But the first relationship they show him in is one that he is, for all intents and purposes, monogamous in.
Yep.
And like looking forward to the monogamy of. So having him fuck it up by sleeping with this rich woman, I don't know. It didn't really it didn't seem like it made a lot of character sense given what we had seen up to that point.
No, and the Tom Cruise, as what his motivation is, like, he starts out seeming almost like he kind of just wants a business. Like, he wants to be a success at something. He wants to make a lot of money, but that's just kind of hand in hand with being a success.
Yeah.
After he moves to Jamaica, it's more about just getting money. And Tom Cruise doesn't even really say that. It's what other characters tell him to do. And he's like, yes, I must get money. I will sleep with this rich woman. And
all that stuff felt weird to me too, because like his move to Jamaica comes after that big, breakup he has with Brian Brown, and it felt much more just like a I need to get out of here kind of move, like a I need to be alone for a while, than it did, oh, I'm going to Jamaica to make a shitload of money. Even though they did talk about doing that.
Yeah,
like the,
right.
the
There's
quickness
no expenses.
with which he does it. Yeah, the quickness with which he does it seemed much more like just a reaction of I need to get out of New York kind of thing. So having it be so much about just getting money seemed kind of strange too.
Yeah. And when he's
because after the first time he mentions the opening up their own place, he never mentions it again until the end of the movie.
No.
Like, so getting the money thing, there's not even like an end game there. There's no, well, I mean, I guess technically there is the point where he tells Brian Brown that he's shacking up with this rich woman who's going to give him like $100,000 or something like that. But even so, it's like it doesn't feel like it's a driving motivation for him.
Right, that's the perfect way to describe it. Tom Cruise's character doesn't feel like his motivation isn't really affecting him. It feels like it's kind of window dressing for this is what the movie wants to be, but the character himself doesn't ever come across that way. Although, well, I will say that Tom Cruise in this movie might be the most like amoral character that's ever been put to film on some level, because he's really truly a terrible person all the way to the end. Like the end of the movie, I feel like the movie sort of veers after Jamaica. The movie veers into this weird self-parody sort of form of what's going on, where it's a lot of like, what the fuck is happening moments in the audience. So it turns out that he sleeps with Elizabeth Shue, and he goes home back to New York with this rich woman. Elizabeth Shue sees him with the rich woman. She gets upset and leaves. He goes back to New York with the rich woman, and they break up because, you know, he doesn't want to put up with her highfalutin art house ways, and he's going to go off and do his own thing, be his own success. And then he goes,
and she's basically using him as a lapdog, essentially.
Yes, yeah, right. She's much older. She's the thing that Ebert listed, the female strong mentor or whatever. And then he breaks up with her. And then he goes back and he's like, I'm going to find Elizabeth Shue. And he goes into the diner that she works, and they meet, and then she brings him back, and they have a fight, and they're fighting. And the greatest line in the movie comes at that point. She says, "How could you sleep with someone while we were, you know, barely knowing each other in Jamaica?" And he says, "Hey, listen, when a guy lays down a dare, you got to take it." And then she says, "Oh, I'm pregnant," which I spent the next 10 minutes saying, when is she going to tell him that she's not really pregnant and she's just fucking with him?
I was thinking that too, yeah.
And it doesn't happen. She is actually pregnant. And that is the thing that carries the rest of the movie, where Tom Cruise has to sort of fight for Elizabeth Shue, who he spent 6 hours with in Jamaica one day, and he chases her all the way to New York and has to deal with her father, has to deal with her doorman who is like trained in martial arts, and then resolve the movie. And that's about it. So we can talk about the ending, because it's absurd.
Well, the moment when you find out that Elizabeth Shue is also rich, I literally said "fuck you" at the screen.
Yeah,
because it felt like another version of that Devil's Choice from A Good Year, where it's like, well, you can either stay with the rich woman and just have everything paid for you and just have sex with her for the rest of your life or whatever, or you can go with Elizabeth Shue, who loves you and is having your child and is also rich. You know, it's like it's not really that much of a. They try to make it into something else by having the father try to pay him off and be like, you're my daughter's too good for you, that kind of shit. It's like, come on, after like a year, that stuff's gonna blow over, and they're married, they have a kid. They're gonna be welcomed back into the family. It's not an issue.
Just the logic of it. Like, what kind of relationship does Elizabeth Shue have with her father, where she has a one-night stand where she meets a guy for 6 hours, goes home and tells her father not only that this happened, but his like name, and the father knows everything about him when he shows up. And it's like, why did she tell him all this information? That's so bizarre that she would do that.
My favorite part of the movie was when they meet in Jamaica, and he asks her what she does, and she says that she's an artist, and he says, "Oh, you pay the bills with that?" She's like, "Yeah, sometimes." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. She's must be a working commercial illustrator."
Right?
No, she's like an abstract fine art painter, and I can tell you, she is not paying the bills with that. At that point, I should have been like, "Oh, her parents are clearly rich."
Yes, yep. She's got her studio apartment, and she's got all her art laid out, and Daddy is
not to say that it can't be done. I'm just saying it's
No.
harder than they make it seem.
Yes, absolutely. And
I was just gonna say overall, like the character arc for Tom Cruise in this movie should be, right, idealist young kid, trusts Brian Brown too early, falls into like gets attached, Brian Brown betrays him, so then he turns into a callous capitalist who is only after money, who then in the end gets softened and turned around by Elizabeth Shue, right?
Yes.
But you don't really get a sense of that at all. It's just sort of like him kind of floating through life.
Right.
And also, I think it's also hampered by the fact that until the point where Brian Brown says, I've known this guy for 3 years, I had no idea how much time had passed at all.
No, that was a comment we had. We were unsure between Tom Cruise's constantly changing hair length and what was going on. We're like, is this intentionally jumping time? Like, and when he goes to Jamaica, why don't they put a little chyron that says 3 years later? Like, there's nothing to lose by doing that. It was a very odd decision.
And like, how long was he with that woman for? Because there's this point at the end where he goes back to his uncle's bar, and it's like he walks in like they haven't seen each other in such a long time, or at least, I should say, I think that's how it's supposed to be, but it doesn't feel that way. And then he sits down at the bar, and he says, I'm going to be a dad. And in my head, I'm like, is the uncle going like, you couldn't even be in the city for like a year and a half without knocking somebody out? Like, it's like, is it 5 years? Is it 6 years? And if it's that long, how come the uncle isn't like, holy shit, I haven't seen you in 5 years or something? Like, there's no, like that interaction at the end really made me like, I felt like, this should be a little bit weightier or something. I don't know.
Right. Cause he's at least been in Jamaica for 3 years, it seems like, or, you know,
I mean, I don't know. Was he working with Brian Brown for 3 years and he's only been in Jamaica for like 6 months? I don't know.
I don't think. I think they ended that immediately. I guess when he punched him right in the face at that nightclub, which supports the bartender standing up and doing poor poetry to people, and everyone shuts up and turns the music down and listens to the bartender.
Yeah, generally in these movies, I tend to go, oh man, that club looks so cool. I wish I could have been in that club in the 80s.
Right.
This is one where I would not say that.
Yes. You know what it reminded me of? And if we ever talk about Air Force One, the one thing that...
God willing.
Yeah, this movie is one of the movies that it fetishizes a particular position. Like, it thinks that bartenders are like the greatest people in the world, and people just love bartenders. Air Force One is that way when you pay attention to how often people will just end a conversation by just saying like, he's the president, damn it. Yeah. Like they fetishize the position of president so much that they're willing to do anything to save Harrison Ford in this movie.
Well, you know, that's an interesting thing because, you know, you're taking a line of work, for lack of a better term, that isn't really explored in a lot of movies or stuff like that, and you're trying to create a culture around it. You know, you're trying to you want to tell a story that takes place that's about a bartender,
right?
But so in order to do that, you want to create a world in which bartending is the most important thing in the world.
Yes,
and you know, and that's just one of the things you have to deal with. I mean, if you're trying to create a story based on a certain line of work or vocation, like Black Swan or The Wrestler, right? Black Swan treats it as though ballet dancing is the most important thing in the world. But the way that Black Swan and The Wrestler succeed, where I think this movie fails and other movies like this can fail, is it doesn't have to be the most important thing in the world to everybody.
Right, exactly.
It just has to be the most important thing in the world to the main character of the story.
Yes.
So when you get into these things where it's like you know, where they would have like, not that this happens in Cocktail, but it would be like you have a movie about bartenders where they're covering the National Bartending Championships on ESPN or something like that. It's like, that shit, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I mean, even like Kingpin posits a world where bowling is like the most exciting sport in the world, which for that movie it works fine. But for generally, it's like you have to kind of, you know, I'm a big proponent, as I've talked before, about setting parameters of your world and knowing how far your world expands into other stuff.
Yes.
And going too big with this stuff makes it feel really hollow very quickly.
It's the scenes like when he's in Jamaica and Brian Brown comes up and is just giving him shit. Like their back and forth is some of the worst banter I think I've ever seen written on
it's
film.
really
Like,
bad.
How come I've always got the chippies and you're always with the princess?
Well, that's a question only you can answer. This man's phenomenal. Put him in a room full of women, and he goes to the poorest and the dumbest every single time.
The man's astounding. His wife parades half naked on the beach, and he thinks she's just there for the sun.
My wife does not need other men.
You know what they say about sexual vanity in men over 40? It's the first sign of senility.
Please try to keep your envy in check.
Ooh, envy.
He's my protege. I taught him all I know.
Together with a token might get me on a subway.
But you can only take a guy so far. Then it's a question of biology. Biology is destiny.
Ah, the old philosopher.
You see, there are two kinds of people in this world. The workers and the hustlers. The hustlers never work and the workers never hustle. And you, my friend, are a worker. God knows I've tried to beat that instinct out of him, but it's there ingrained in your immigrant blood. Look how tasty your cocktails are. Look how clean you keep your bar. Why, man, you actually take pride in your work.
it's far too aggressive, and they don't have a friendly edge to it.
Yes.
And so it comes across as weird that Tom Cruise would remain friends with Brian Brown, because it doesn't really seem like they like each other.
It's because of his intensity.
Right. Yeah.
Like, he doesn't know how to be, like, casually snarky. He's just intensely snarky.
Well, when like the scene where him and Brian Brown are jarring at each other, Tom Cruise is doing the actorly bit of he's looking at the extras, who are the people at the bar, who are customers, who are sort of paying attention to it. And he's kind of going like, ha ha, like he's trying to laugh it off. And it comes across so fake and so horrible that, like, if it was a movie that was any sense grounded in reality, the customer would just be like, can you guys stop talking to me? Like, why are you trying to drag me into your horrible argument here? I'd rather just, the people would stand up and leave, and that kind of a thing. It doesn't happen in this movie. It's weird.
Yeah, and he's got this weird, like, passive-aggressive smile that he does.
Yes, he's very passive-aggressive.
Where he smiles, but he has his lips pursed. And it's like a very specific Tom Cruise smile, because he's got a lot of them. Where it's like he does that one when he's trying to be passive-aggressive and snarky to somebody.
Yeah. So after the baby reveal, he's in turmoil. He eventually ends up with Brian Brown again. They're at a fancy party. Brian Brown is married rich. He is married to some woman who's successful or something. He invests all of his money in commodities, which is what they say, and he loses all his money. He's broke. Tom Cruise goes to drive his wife back, and she tries to seduce him, and Tom Cruise says, "No, I'm a man of integrity. I won't screw the wife of Brian Brown, my good friend, who I hate." Mm-hmm. And then he goes back to find him, and he walks in, and Brian Brown has slit his throat with a bottle of whiskey or brandy, whatever the hell they were drinking. And Tom Cruise
very aggressively.
Very
like
aggressively.
He looks like he just like slammed his neck down onto the broken bottle and just like a vampire tore his throat out.
And Tom Cruise screams, "Help me! Help me!" as they show the exterior of the boat. I can't laugh. Me and Amy both burst out laughing when we walked in. He was just dead in a pile of blood, because it's so unexpected, and it's so not what the movie is about. Like, why did Brian Brown need to kill himself at the very end? It was just so.
Why doesn't he just have drank himself to death?
Yeah, that would make more sense, right? That's thematic.
That's the trajectory they have him on. Is he's basically, or I mean, theoretically, he should be essentially the dark timeline version of Tom Cruise, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And because they make a point at the beginning of the movie where he offers him a drink, and he's like, "No, I'm going to stick with beer." And then he, again,
gives him a shot. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically dares him to take a shot, and you can't not answer a dare. And then from that point on, he starts drinking a lot. So, like, and Brian Brown is always drinking. So you'd think that there was a, if they just had him, Jimi Hendrix himself.
Yep.
On the boat, then that would make a lot more thematic sense. But I think just the movie has gotten so kind of aimless by that point that you need to do something shocking to get you back into the story.
It's a comical amount of blood. Like, I'm sure people bleed quite a bit when they do that, but it's like it's like a horror movie scene when he walks in there and he's just laying on the table with the blood everywhere. It's really, really grotesque. And that causes Tom Cruise to realize the error of his ways. He goes and finds Elizabeth Shue. He breaks into the penthouse, which is very easy to get into, obviously. He gets up there, he runs around, he says, I want to marry you. I've known you for 8 hours now by this point, and I think that we should really hit it off together. The doorman comes in, and they sort of have an action sequence where Elizabeth Shue and Tom Cruise fight the doorman. And Tom Cruise literally kicks people in the ass twice in this movie, which I noted, which was a very interesting thing. Someone's got their back turned to him, and he kicks them right in the ass.
I'll be honest with you. I think that's an underrated move. If you take like the toe of a shoe right in the asshole, that's going to hurt.
It doesn't.
I don't care who you are.
It doesn't look very powerful. Is the problem with it? It's certainly painful, but it doesn't look very imposing. And then
I'm telling you, you get a wingtip right in the pooper, and it's not. You're not gonna have a good day.
Former loafers. Yeah, and Tom Cruise fights, and then they run off and they get married. And Tom Cruise's uncle gives them a $10,000 loan, and he opens his own bar, and he's going to be living the dream of being a bartender who has twins for babies because things can always get worse. And then that's the end of the movie.
And he, like, at his thing at the end, people are asking him to do a poem. Like, that's his thing, even though he only did that once on the spur of the moment, like an hour and 40 minutes ago.
Yep.
Like, he never does that again ever in the movie. Why is that, like, his thing?
No, you'd think you'd get a taste of it in Jamaica or something. He'd give, like, a little sort of regional flair to his poetry, but he really doesn't. And, again, people are just rapt by the bartender doing poetry up on the bar.
Yeah. This movie, Tom Cruise in this movie felt like he was doing his best Michael J. Fox impression. Like, I felt like this movie would have been a lot more relatable if Michael J. Fox had been playing that character. Especially that scene where he's studying for class and then he's late, so he's like slapsticking his way out the front door.
Right.
I was like, that scene was like that was a A+ Michael J. Fox scene right there.
Yeah, I think that the it's a movie that's really kind of hokey and doesn't really know what it's trying to say or what it's trying to do about anything. I mean, for a movie about drinking, there's no hangovers or anything like that. Like, no one shows the downsides of drinking.
Yeah, there really isn't. There's just Elizabeth Shue's friend passing out on the beach. But, I mean, aside from that, it's... Well, I mean, I guess...
Unintended pregnancy, maybe?
Yeah. Tom Cruise does have that kind of little monologue he gives about, you know, bartending is something that you're supposed to do at night while you work on your day job, but then the longer you do it, the more you're drinking and partying, and the nights get longer and the days get short. Like, and there's a little bit of that when he's... You know, he's showing up late for class and he's tired, but it's never explicitly like he's hungover. It's just that he's working late.
Yeah, and it's something from all the sort of bartenders and late night bar staff people that I've known. That like field turns very weird very quickly. Like, yeah, no one. It's a certain kind of personality that gets into that work, and I'm talking about like bar wait staff and stuff like. Not a restaurant that closes at 7 o'clock or something, but like something that's later. It's the people tend to.
You need hand-eye coordination, like you would not believe.
Yeah, it's a job it's kind of taken up by the people I've known who do it are just more. I don't know how to describe it. It's a little bit darker than this movie wants to portray it. Like the late. I don't think you want to be a bartender for that amount of time. You know, it's fine every once in a while, or fine doing it as a gig for, you know, just to make some money or something. But the people who do it full time for a long time tend to come out a little bit more twisted than Tom Cruise does by the end of this one. And that's a generalization, but that's just sort of the people that I've known who've done it. And I don't know.
You're going to get letters from the bar association.
I know.
That's what the bar association is, right? Yeah. Bartenders.
I'll just go to my community college and figure out how to become a lawyer and then get around it. My favorite sort of tiny moment that just shows you that no one really cares about a movie is when he goes to the diner, right? Elizabeth Shue works at a diner. So he goes in there in the morning, people are eating like eggs and pancakes. He sits down and the table next to him goes, excuse me, miss, we have tickets to the theater. Can you bring us our food? And I want to know what kind of theater show is going on at 8 o'clock in the morning that day.
I noticed that through the entire movie. Like, I could not get a handle on what time things were happening at, because like for instance, that scene I was talking about where he's late for class or whatever. Excuse me. What time is it? Like, was he there all night, or was he? Because the bar seems to be open. Yep. But is it like an afternoon class? Like, anytime it's like. It seemed like they always needed to use the ambient light from outside, so they were always shooting during the daytime, because every scene with a window in it was during the day almost, at least during the first half of the movie. It was very strange. There's a lot of it was really disorienting between that and not understanding how much time had passed, and it's just a weird movie.
It is. Would you recommend people watch this movie?
No, probably not.
No, I think it's the first one that if you have nothing going on like, some kind of like week night or something like that, like if you just kind of want a cheesy movie to watch, I think I kind of recommend it, because I did laugh at it. Like, yeah, I did think it was unintentionally funny in a lot of ways, and I think that it's an interesting dark side for Tom Cruise, like how bad Tom Cruise movies could possibly be. Yeah. For me, I don't know. I mean, if I'm thinking about movies from this era, specifically Tom Cruise movies, I mean, if it came down to this, like, if someone said, "Oh, should I watch Cocktail?" I would either say, "No, you should watch Top Gun," and if they say, "Well, I've seen Top Gun," I would say, "Well, then you should watch The Color of Money." Right. Like it's I don't know. It's like I don't know the situation in which I would say you should watch Cocktail. I mean, I'm not saying don't watch it. It's perfectly fine, I guess. It's like, definitely the best movie we've watched to this point. Would you best of the worst movies? Yeah. It's not
an awful experience. I think there's it. I guess, if you're looking for something that you can kind of shut your mind off for and just enjoy an early, young Tom Cruise thing, yeah, sure, I guess. But I mean, if you're asking me personally, would I recommend it? I would say probably no.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a great group movie. Maybe not a great group movie. This movie would be enhanced by watching it with multiple people, I believe, if no one cares about people talking over the movie and things like that.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say I could see this being a movie that like. A group of people enjoy and like reference. Right.
Yes, I think so too. Judging by some of the Twitter feedback, I was surprised by the amount of people who've actually seen Cocktail. Just from people who sort of listen to the show and stuff like that. Like people know it enough to reference it, and I was totally unfamiliar with everything that goes on about it.
This is the first one. This is the first one where our friend Pat is a decent Tom Cruise fan, and I asked him last night, I was like, "Have you seen Cocktail?" I was like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Oh man, that movie, huh?" And then he was like, "Well," and I was like, "Oh yeah, maybe I'll, you know what, forget it, it's great, I don't need to talk about it."
Do you know what the tagline for the movie is?
Shaken, not stirred, or I don't know.
When he pours, he rains.
What?
Reigns as in REIGN, obviously.
I mean, so is that? I assume that's an inversion of when it rains, it pours,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not a good tagline, but it's interesting. It also has nothing to. It's not really great for the movie, but it's also a little bit too confusing for a tagline, I think, on some level.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't go with like "Drink Up" or something.
Yes, yeah. Here's to you, Brian.
Brian. Come mix it up with Cocktail or some stupid shit like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a funny movie for all the little moments, but I think that we've talked about it enough. I enjoyed it on some level.
My poster for Cocktail would be just the text from that poem that he reads at the cell block, whatever that.
Yes, the cell block.
Whatever that place was. Yeah, where he's talking about the drinks and stuff. It would be just the text from that, and it would just say Tom Cruise Cocktail. And I mean, well, clearly, I assume this movie made money.
It made it. This was one of the most successful movies of 1988.
Yeah, so don't listen to me.
It made 171 million on a budget of 20 million.
Wow.
Yep.
Man. You know, the other thing that surprised me about this too is that it wasn't made by anybody like famous.
No.
Like I didn't look the guy up, but I didn't recognize the name either.
Hayward Gould. He's
Hayward Jablomi?
Hayward Gould has written Rolling Thunder, The Boys from Brazil, Fort Apache, The Bronx, Sheets of Gold, Cocktail, and that's it. What has this director done? The director is Roger Donaldson, who has done, if the internet cooperates with me, he did No Way Out, 13 Days, Dante's Peak.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's it?
No, he's got a bunch here. Hold on.
Okay,
Sleeping
sorry.
Dogs, Nutcase, The Bounty,
All
Cadillac
right, so yeah,
Man.
that's it.
Oh, he did
Oh,
Species.
he did Cadillac
He's
Man?
Species, the guy.
Species.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
no
we go.
kidding. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so he's been working.
Does he
works.
do a lot of TV?
Let me see here. No, he's only directed film, it looks like.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I'm it's like I guess I was surprised because I knew Cocktail, I knew of Cocktail, and I knew it was a fairly famous Tom Cruise movie, so I expected more star power behind the person who made it, but at the same time, it's not like really visually interesting in the least.
No, it's not. It's
unless you count Elizabeth Shue, who
yes,
Machi.
yeah.
She's an attractive lady.
Let me see here. Yeah, I don't think there's really much else to do with this one. It's interesting. I'll be looking forward to Risky Business because I think that's a very similar kind of movie, right? That will just be better made. So it'll be easier. It'll be interesting to talk about the contradictions there and how they sort of mash up with each other.
And it's got Booger and Balky in it.
Yep, it does. I haven't seen that one.
Back when you could play off Tom Cruise as being like a nerd with nerd friends.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, our final thing. Did you get the impression that Tom Cruise was a catch in this movie? Was Tom Cruise a cool guy in this movie? Was he supposed to be a cool guy?
I assumed so. It's tough. I mean, I think Tom Cruise is probably one of the hardest people to make that judgment call with looking back because he is what he is now. But I guess he is what he is now then as well. So it's not like you were casting a no-name guy in this movie about,
right,
the fast-paced world of drink making.
I was just, the movie doesn't portray him as being super successful with people. Like he's not
true.
He's not really killing it out there on the social scene aspect, which is weird to me. So I didn't really know if he was in over his head or if he's supposed to be the next big thing or whatever worked. I think the movie's just a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah, and it's also not super clear about how applicable his skills are really to anything.
Right. He goes from killing people to flipping bottles to working in Jamaica, I guess.
Yeah, and like the thing that he learns, the stuff he learns with Brian Brown, it's like that is over so quickly that okay, so now he's just a bartender who flips a cup in the air every couple minutes.
Yeah,
it wasn't. His skill set was not super. It wasn't like he was out there wallowing in nothingness in Jamaica with this set of skills he's just sitting on money.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's it. We'll call it a day there. So thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back with Risky Business, which will be the next Tom Cruise film coming up, and that's his highest rated one. It's at like 87% or something like that. But
that's a little surprising to me, too. I'm surprised that they are so close together. And, well, if it's not... I'm surprised, A, that it's not Top Gun.
Yes.
And B, that if it's not Top Gun, it's not something more recent.
Yes, that's my surprise too. These are both the 80s, like his early career. Tom Cruise has the extremes of it. Yeah. But anyway, check out the social media. You can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support the show, all that stuff, and we'll be back with Risky Business. So I think that's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Just once again, if January 31st, my book Redline comes out in a collected edition. If you happen to be walking by a comic book store, or you know what, if you feel like going out of your way to a comic book store, picking one up, that would be great. Very much not for kids, though, so just keep that in mind.
Yep, just be sure to go during opening hours.
You could say that Redline is some risky business.
With that segue, we'll be back in a week or two with Risky Business. Thank you guys very much for listening. We'll see you next time.